the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, did the pledge. We have a quorum, so this meeting's called to order. Announcements. I have no announcements. No announcements at this time. So then we will go to public comments. Just remember, public comments are limited to 3 minutes each. So you have the sign up there? What do you got?
JP Morgan.
Is that the only one?
That's the first one.
Okay. Do you want to go first, or did you want the other one to go first? All right. So we have JP Morgan. You got 3 minutes.
I'm JP Morgan. My address is PO Box 1479 in Blanco, 78606. I'm the president of the Protect Our Blanco organization formed about 2 years ago to try to work with the city and control the discharge effluent into the Blanco River and work on the system of disposing of waste from the city of Blanco and other groups the city of Blanco may opt to accept sewage from. We want to thank you tonight. You're going to get a chance to see a presentation by one of the speakers, not one of the 3 minute people, but somebody who's actually been given some meaningful time. And that's David Baker. He is the president of Wimbledon Valley Watershed Association, and he's also a member of POB. And I don't want to steal his thunder, but I did want to visit with you just briefly. We as POB feel like the city and its initial engineer, it's no longer the city engineer involving the application to amend the wastewater discharge permit, was given the idea that the best and really only choice was what we call a regional system. And the regional system is we set up a rather expensive and pretty complicated, as Mr. Rodriguez can attest to, system to treat sewage, and then we dispose of it. And tragically, that disposition included, at least up until about 6 months ago, dumping it in the Blanco River. And what Protect Our Blanco's goal is to try to flesh out what we think to be, in a immensely more cost-efficient, ecologically sound, and environmentally attuned system, and that's what they call a decentralized system. That doesn't work for the city of Blanco. What works for the city of Blanco is what the city of Blanco has been doing, and that is takes in its relatively modest amount of sewage that happens here in the city of Blanco. They treat it and they irrigate it. It's worked for forever. I found in the 1960s, showing that the city had right, wasn't dumping in the river. And the commitment back then was that the city would only dump in the river when that was the only option. Well, it obviously the only option, considering all the So what we're hoping is that the really smart, forward-thinking people of Blanco and that Protect Our Blanco was able to bring to the table, we're going to be able to convince the city that the decentralized system, where the developers absorb the cost of treating the sewage in their development, they address it, they treat it, and they tend to it, and they're really good systems that people are using today, including Rocky J. But what we believe is that this decentralized system is that it's going to offer the advantages that the developers absorb the cost of treating all the sewage generated in their development. And the developers understand it's a cost of doing business. They recognize. Thank you. We also believe that it also plays a regular sense forward-looking by the city, because the city doesn't have to build today this multiple $million-dollar system to treat sewage that we don't have to cost. So we believe in a few minutes you're going to hear people more comfortable with their masks than I am, and people that know better what these systems are, but we think you're going to see that the decentralized system is the better choice. Now, I want to thank you for your service and for the time this evening.
Right.
So I'll take the next guy in.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
So what's the next gentleman's name?
Nick, DORNGA. A or AK.
Sounds like Nick. I mean,
There's a water
are you Nick? All right. So Nick, you have 3 minutes, Nick.
Okay.
Or wait till you start the actual first
You
word.
mask on?
You gotta leave it on. Then.
Yeah.
How do you spell your name? URN.
NAK.
Thank you.
Sure.
For some reason I couldn't, I'm gonna just try to pin this thing here. There we go. Hi, I'm Nick Dorak with Meadow Center for Texas State University, and I will be speaking a little bit later during the presentation. I just wanted to reintroduce myself to some of you. Back in 2019, we put together a memorandum of understanding with the city of Blanco with some commitments to helping the city in any type of technical capacity or education capacity to help you understand your options when it comes to water conservation, water management, water quality protection. And last year, we also hosted with Hill Country Alliance, Doucette Engineering, the city of Blanco, put together a one water workshop here at the courthouse. And we had folks from all over the Hill Country region come together to look at solutions for better management of our water resources on the water supply side as well as on the wastewater side. We're seeing a lot of progress in the Hill Country there, and we would like to encourage the city to work with us as well as you weigh out your options and weigh out your decisions that you have to make over the coming months and years with how to handle the growth, the anticipated growth, as well as your current needs. And I think that we have access to a lot of partners, a lot of technical experts that we would be willing to bring together to help you guys make the most informed decision for your community and for protecting this beautiful region of Texas. So that's it. I'm going to speak a little bit more later, but it's good to be in Blanco. Good to see all of you. And it was nice to take my ball cap off, shorts. I don't know what was under my ball cap for like 3 months, but anyway, it's good to be here in person. Thank you.
Nick, or who are you with?
I'm with the Meadow Center at Texas State University.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All righty. Any other? That's all we had to sign up for public comments. Is that correct?
One more, Bill, B-A-U-C-H.
Bill who?
Bill Blanch. Bill Blanch, thank you.
What's your name?
Yeah.
Bill, welcome. Okay, we're going to give you 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. Thank you all for your service to this fine community, the larger region. I'm Bill Blanch, I'm Executive Director of Sabre Springs Alliance. I work with Protect Our Blanco folks and the Norley Valley Watershed Association to put together the presentation that you're going to hear tonight. We are the ones who were the lead in commissioning Professor Ryan King, the Baylor University biology professor, to do the research on the rivers last year. And that's backup information as part of that presentation. Professor King's not here. I'm a lawyer, not a biologist, but I do have an undergrad in biology. And I've been studying these issues of nutrient pollution and their effects on our crystal clear Hill Country streams for a number of years. Professor King is the expert in the state on this. Done incredible research over the last 20 years on this issue, funded largely by both TCEQ and EPA, with the specific question of what level of nutrients do we need to keep below if we want to have our streams stay healthy and clean. So I hope that you'll pay attention to that presentation. It's very solid science. It's a little bit dry, a little long, a little slow, but it's worth looking at. I'm going to leave you with a letter as well, and just hit the high points of the Clean Water Act framework for this. The Clean Water Act was passed in 1972, signed into law by President Nixon, overwhelmingly supported by Democrats and Republicans. It's still embraced broadly by everyone, incredible consensus behind both the goals of the act and its substance. The very first words of the act set out the intent, which is to restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of our nation's waters. And when you have an incredibly crystal clear hill country stream like the Blanco, the only way you can achieve that is by keeping your treated wastewater out of the river. The very next line about goals and policy reads, and I quote, "It is a national goal that the discharge of pollutants into the navigable waters be eliminated by 1985. Now, obviously, we didn't achieve that goal. But you have a great opportunity here to move towards that on a local basis. And rather than increase discharge, eliminate the discharge. And we'd love to work with you towards that. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a one pager, so take one. I need to leave one with the board.
You can leave one right here.
City secretary here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
There's 101 total. Here's my model.
There's it.
People want to speak here.
Paul Sanchez, Novato.
Hello, sorry, I was having trouble with this form. I'm with Defenders of Wildlife, and I was thinking that the speaking would be after the presentations, but the main reason I wanted to comment was in support of the project being presented by the Wimberley Valley Watershed Association. And in particular, the question about the discharge, either no discharge in the Blanco River until wastewater treatment is improved to actually break down the nitrates and phosphates that are in the water. I mean, there's technology available, but it's not being used yet. So until the technology is going to be applied, we really need to make sure that we keep the nutrients out of the Blanco River and basically the aquifer as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. That the only one we had online. Bill. All righty. So that's all we have for public comments. The first item we have on the agenda is to discuss and consider action of the water treatment plant. We will move that down. We have an executive session to discuss that, so we will move that to after we have the executive session. So at this time, I will open the public hearing to consider a public presentation by protestant Protectar Blanco on City of Blanco's pending wastewater permit application WQ 00105-49002. Mr. Morgan, I take it you're going to start it, and Baker, my bad. Mr. Baker, and we are running it in about 30 minutes. Is that?
Oh, we should be able to.
Okay, good, because we got a long night ahead of us, so
Yeah,
we're trying to keep it to.
And Mayor and Council, I really appreciate the opportunity. I know this has been a long process for the city, and it's been over 5 years since you started this permitting process and building new plan. I'm very grateful to Councilman Lewis for taking us on a tour about 6 weeks ago and seeing that there was no discharge happening. There was the irrigation, and that was really positive thing. I think you'll see in the presentation the impact it's had. We've been in this contested case mode since August of 2018, and I'm here really today to come representing these different groups. You heard from Meadow Center and SOS. Case County has written a letter that's in your packet.
the Wimberley Valley Watershed Association, so I'm the director of, but I'm also a board member with Protective Blanco and Sabre Springs, Still Country Alliance, we've written a letter of support, and then Sabre Creek Associations. So these groups are all very interested in this permit and also in just Blanco in general and the Blanco River Valley. And, we're here really to find a peaceful balance. We're asking to join you in a new start, kind of since the permit has been remanded, we got a chance to sort of start over a process. We hope to build partnerships with the city, with these organizations, with the local governments, and with the university. And we think if we pool our resources, there could be great fortune for the people of Blanco and a clear future for the waters of Blanco Basin. We do not wish to hinder growth and development. I want to be really clear about that. We just want to make sure that occurs without wastewater discharge. And that's our primary goal. This is Blanco River Basin. And it's really one river that we share. And whether that's, where it starts in Kendall County out past Lukenbach and runs, shallow to 87 miles and meets the San Marcos River, there's really, no difference whether it's upstream, it's here in Blanco, Wimberley, or all the way to the San Marcos, or even, El Rancho Sima there. It's just another bend in the river. And so these areas are all interconnected. We feel like we're part of one community. And that's why so many of us are so interested in this permit. And this is a shot of the basin showing water wells that are on the Water Development Board's database. And this is a limestone aquifer that's underneath this 412 square miles of the basin. And this is such a unique river. The groundwater and the surface water are so intimately intertwined. As you saw there at Chimney Valley Road, where about 9 million gallons of the Blanco recharges into the Trinity Aquifer. And we saw what happened when Ken Morgan tried to drill in that area, how interconnected that is. I think that same situation with the discharge potentially impact those groundwater resources and drinking water. But these wells provide our sole source of drinking water for this whole basin and much of the hill country. And we're also seeing declines. And if you look at the groundwater maps, we've lost about 100 foot of groundwater levels in this area over the last 35 to 40 years. So that's impacting the river. We talked about those small springs that used to flow that aren't. And so we think that this all, by reusing this water, that's going to help with, we're desperate really for alternative water supplies. And we think that this beneficial reuse and the treated wastewater can provide some relief for what would be irrigation waters. And so this is a photo of 2019 when we had the algae bloom there at the 165 bridge, and then there's 2020 in the summer when it was clean and flowing. And the city, I think in October 2018, started discharging anywhere from 60,000 to about 220,000 gallons a day. And when y'all saw, we saw a pretty quick recovery of the river there. And as previous speakers mentioned, that nitrogen and phosphorus levels in that wastewater are just too high for this rock bottom river. And when we see this, this kind of recovery, we feel like the draft permit would allow excessive phosphorus and nitrogen, and as Bill said, violate the Clean Water Act. So this is the presentation or the study that Ryan Keene from Baylor did. It did sampling upstream and downstream of the discharge, and
it saw the elevated nutrients there from the wastewater. And the discharge led to this algae growth, and his science bears that out. We saw aquatic life altered by even this short period, and we really think that these phosphorus levels and nitrogen levels really should not be put into the river, or we're going to have continued nuisance of algae onto that aquatic life. So that study the full study is online, something that I think you all certainly we've got a place that's all stored. And then this was data from the Clean Rivers Program, the Guadalupe River Authority, and looking at the state park and over the last year in the 165 bridge. And you can see the dramatic decline there in that red line is the nitrogen at the 165 bridge and the phosphorus in the lower one. So we did see a direct decline in those nutrients there. 1.6 million gallons of discharge. This is, the planning area. It's a little confusing. The north is to the left there, and this is the expansion imagined in the wastewater master plan. And we think that the discharge obviously degrades water quality of the river, affects the neighbors downstream, and ultimately will create possibly a negative fiscal impact, not only by maybe the decline in their tourism, but also just the cost of building out that big infrastructure. We did a report that estimated about $60 million to build additional pipes out to these areas. And so, engineering is at the heart of all this. And I think the long-term solution to keep the discharge out of the river is really about bringing together these groups, the expertise, the financial resources that we can bring to the city, and to really look at these alternatives. What are the non-discharge alternatives, and how much will it cost, and how can we help the city with resources to make sure that water doesn't get discharged. And I think, as I've talked to you all, I don't think anybody wants to do that. I think the engineers originally, laid that out there, but I think you all know that that's probably not the best long-term solution. So these are the partners. You all have got some letters in your packet, and I think the agreement that we have with Meadow Center, the MOU that's already in place, could act as an umbrella for this working group to build these partnerships and the technical and financial resources to look for this no discharge solution. And so we're super dedicated to working with the city. I think all the things that I've ever accomplished have all been done through partnership and collaboration. And this is really the final slide here, but really requesting the council to consider action at your next council meeting to pause the wastewater permit amendment, to not file for a new pipe or discharge, but utilize that MOU from the Meadow Center to facilitate this working group, and then authorize an engineering study at no cost to the city to explore over this next 60 to 90 days what are those options, how much will they cost, and how will we pay for them. And give us that window to just try to come up with some solutions and see how we can work together to solve the problem, but also bring some additional resources that I know the city has struggled with in terms of even just getting the plant up to speed. And I was so happy to see it operating well, and see the Matt took us on a really good tour and showed some additional lands that are adjacent that potentially could be accessed for additional treatment. So we'd like to explore all that and really work with y'all to see if we can come up with a solution here in the next 3 months. But that's really all I have. There, like I said, all this information we studied online. There's a link there to where you guys can access that. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we really look forward to a conversation with you all about how we could move forward on this.
I have one question, off the top of my head. I just didn't watch the video presentation by, Dr. King last night, and it seems like, my understanding, tell me if I'm wrong, is that this is really sort of the latest science about what all rivers can take and can't take and stuff. In other words, I think what he's suggesting is beyond what is the current limit that is allowed. Is that true?
That's right. I think that the TCQ limits are not strict enough for these hill country rock bottom streams.
Right.
They use similar standards to what they treat in the Trinity River. And you got, lots of vegetation, you've got really high flows. So it's a very different dynamic. And we've got real low flows, no vegetation that absorb that nitrogen and phosphorus. So it immediately creates an algae bloom, it affects the aquatic life. And we don't regulate for pharmaceuticals, these emerging contaminants, these endocrine disruptors that can be in that wastewater, that those, go into the groundwater, somebody swimming in the river could be affected by those. So that's another thing we think the land application and reuse is really better long-term solution. But I think letting the engineers, we struggled, in the past, the mayor getting into a dialogue, allowing our engineers to even talk with your engineers to at least explore what these options might be. And I think with the university and all these partners, we would love to work on this with you. We can figure out a way that this becomes a model for the hill country as opposed to the thing the hill country doesn't, want to see. But yeah, he did studies that all across the whole hill country, like those ones.
And so, can you just refresh my memory? I know I've heard at some point that municipalities of our size used to only do land application, and then at some point they shifted and started getting these permits for discharge into the rivers. When did all that happen? And
Well,
do you know what made that shift?
Growth is what's driving it, right? It's the growth and projected growth. And I think the 1.6 million, I'm not sure where that original number came from, what that was really based on. We all know the growth is coming. And as I think JT talked about, we do think that there's better treatment methods that are more decentralized. Because if you build those big pipes, which is another 60 million or more, you bring it all back to the plant, and you don't have enough storage or land to irrigate, it's going in the river. And I think the original engineer Jones said, well, this is the cheapest way to do it. It's just to treat it and just to dump it straight in the river. And the TCQ standards are not strict enough to be protective of this type of aquatic environment. And I'm not a scientist, but I get that if there's not plants to uptake that, you got really low flows, and sometimes maybe 90% of the river flow being effluent and more, what that's going to do, what that's going to look like. So we think this land application is the best use for serving the city and its immediate growth, the next decade or 15 years. But really, part of this planning is to look at the long term, this 8,000 acres that you all have, as a projected for this CPN, and coming up with strategies for how to serve that area that would not result in a discharge.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Thank you. I'll say something. I appreciate you coming tonight. We've spoken before, so we're pretty much on the same page. But what I would say tonight is you realize we're coming into our budget cycle. And Blanco is a small community with a limited budget, and this is an important issue. You guys have said that you're willing to bring resources to the table, and I would just ask that y'all clarify what resources, when we work together, we're gonna need help, y'all are gonna need help, so I would kind of clarify what kind of resources y'all can bring to help the city to achieve those goals in the long run. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess.
And the funders that I've talked to, we've got a really fantastic grant from the Water Funders Initiative, national effort with Walton Foundation and Gates. Mitchell Foundation is very interested in this approach, and what they said is, if the city will agree to, just pause and we come up with a scope of work that this, you all would approve of, we would fund that, initial study to look at these options, and then even fund the larger planning effort to look at, transportation, look at water and wastewater supply and treatment. And, we would put together a budget that would, you all, certainly, have to approve for us to move forward. But in the short term, we think by September 8th, we could come back with a scope of work, at least examine these, the existing plan, its capacities, and maybe, have you got this talk to some adjacent landowners and map out kind of what's possible in the short term, to resolve this permit. Because I think that's been weighing on you all, having that, for so long. And I think we can get that settled and then look at this, this bigger scope. I think there's, the downstream landowners, I know Pace County all said, we'll contribute. We've got resources and we want to help, but we need to know what it is we're putting that money towards. So I think tonight, we wanted to make it simple that really the first step is just to pause and allow this engineering, study to go forward. But I think there's lots of grants available to help the city, and I think all these groups are committed to help fund that effort. Like this. Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to say, I'm really impressed with the number of groups. And, Meadows is really highly respected for their work, and, the Hill Country Alliance. That these people are willing to come together to try to help us come up with the best possible solution, is really exciting to me. I'm super on board. This is a river that we all share. And I think that it is appropriate when you share something, a resource, like a river that we have here, that all the parties who share get a say in what happens to it, especially when we're looking at neighbors downstream that are going to be impacted by the decisions that we make. So, I just feel like this is really a great opportunity, and I hope that we can find a way that we can work together with these other groups, and like you guys said, some resources to bring to the table to help with that. But I think everybody in here really wants what's best for the river, and we just need to kind of keep our eye on that goal.
Well, I'm happy to bring back a scope of work on September 8th and the next meeting, get that to you in advance and, see if there's a way we can move forward, because I agree. I think it's better to spend on trying to solve it than paying the lawyers and not getting what we want. You all have a beautiful place here. And I was fortunate last weekend, got to sit in the river with my daughter, and she said, "Dad, this is the best day of the whole year. Just being here in this water." She's like, I just love this, and I hope we can be successful and get the city to work with you. And you know, I think that it's not just for us, it is for these future generations, and for our economy, frankly, and I think you all have a beautiful, beautiful city, and, we really like to work with you and help you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anything else? All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much for having us.
All right. I guess with that, I will close the public hearing and go back to the special meeting. Just to close the special meeting so that we can go into executive session in accordance with the authority contained in the Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074. Oh,
I can speak if you would like to hear just a little more, but I didn't
Go
want
ahead.
to.
Well, I didn't want to cut you out.
yeah, if you make it, it's okay. I'll undo.
Sorry.
Did you already kill everybody, Will?
Take that.
Have you killed everybody yet, Will? No?
Not everybody.
Not everybody? Okay, so it wasn't on purpose whoever we killed. So,
I'll make it very brief. I just wanted to reiterate, that we are here, I'm representing medicine, I'm representing patients. We're here, to help you guys tell the story for this, for your community, for the river, for the Hill Country. We think there's tremendous, research to be gained from all of this as well. I mean, we are testing the limits of what can we do in a community facing growth. How can we protect our resources and also protect the economy of the local community? So I just wanted to say that it is an impressive group of folks that they have brought to the table. We have worked with them. I worked with the Waverly Valley Watershed and Waverly ISD recently. And just last week, the first Clean Water School in Texas opened in Waverly. And I wanted to invite the council as well for a tour of that school at some point to see what sustainable growth in the Hill Country can look like, what it can look like for your community. Not only is it a tremendous step forward in technology and research and seeing all these people and all of this information come together, it's going to save the school $1 million over 30 years in water costs.
Wow.
So there are options. There is information. There are people. There is a lot of support for you, and I just wanted to reiterate the science behind this is clear. I understand. I worked with Mayor Hurden. You know, it was kind of a slow slog, but we talked a lot. There was a lot of faith in what TCEQ would protect the river, and the data clearly shows from Ryan King and from the work that we're doing with the Clean Rivers program. What happens when you put a lot of nutrients in the river, and then what happens when you stop? I mean, there is a clear example right here, and that's not even touching all the endocrine disruptors and all those other things. So, and we also understand that you have a commitment and a duty to your citizens to provide them the best service at the best cost. And that's why I think so many people are willing to understand your predicament too.
Right.
That there's not just infinite capital out there to expend. So finding ways to help leverage the funds that you have available, leverage the resources you have available. And I will tell you, in my experience, in my career of 20 years of water, having a group like this with you is a much better position to be in when you are looking at resources and funds in the future to help with this project. So that I'll leave it there, and I appreciate your time and coming together and allowing us to be here. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, I let you move on.
anybody have any? Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
If you have your business card, would you leave a business card or your?
I can. Let me see.
Okay, at this time, I will really close the public hearing and go
This
back
conference
to-
is no longer being recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Anyways, action. All right, so at 7:38, we will open up the special meeting, and we will go back to business, consider, discuss, take appropriate action on the following. We'll do item number 1, which is discuss and consider action on water treatment plant project, ACP's extension agreement in compliance with applicable procurement laws. So do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we sign the agreement or authorize signature to the agreement for the city of Blanco $1.0 million per day water treatment plant improvement with Associated Contractors Partners Ltd.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Mr. McClellan. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No opposed. All righty. Next thing will be the item number 1 of executive session, Texas Government Code, section 551.071, consultation with attorney, and section 1.05, Texas disciplinary rules and professional conduct, confer with city attorney regarding legal issues associated with the water treatment plant project, bids, and contracts. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we award the bid to Associated Construction Partners Ltd. contingent on 3 items. Number 1, the PWB award concurrence. I couldn't read what I read. Thank you. And number 2, that we address the out-of-pocket expenses or reduce the scope of work accordingly, whatever's decided. And then I've added number 3, prior to construction contract issue, address the concerns that I had sent to Tom on April the 9th, 2020.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Before we have a second, Councilman, I would suggest that you add into your motion the language that find that due to the withdrawal of the previous low bidder, that ACP be recognized as the new low bidder. And if you would just add that language into your motion, sorry.
Okay.
So would you like to?
So now I need to amend the motion. And we need to,
You don't need to amend it.
yeah. Was it second?
No, nobody seconded this one.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'd like to amend my motion to acknowledge that the low bidder had withdrawn from decline to participate in the project. What else do you need, Brad?
Associated.
Recognition.
And the new low bidder, well, actually, the low bidder and the second low bidder withdrew from the contract, and the new low bidder, or the next lowest low bidder, is Associated Construction Partners.
All right, so we have a amended motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Mr. Lewis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All righty, so at this time, do we have a motion to close the regular meeting, and then we will open up the workshop? But at this time, close the regular meeting. We have a motion from Mr. Lewis. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor? And then now we will open the budget workshop for the city of Blanco.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Shane Simpson from ACP, and we look forward to working with y'all. And thank you for your time this evening.
All right. Thank you, Shane.
So much.
All righty, Will, I'm not sure, it's 7:43, what your plans were, how much you were gonna share today. I don't know if it's gonna be an introduction, high level, and then give us some homework, or do we need to order pizza now? And
Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't
Thank you.
look, I don't have an idea.
Okay.
Not hoping that you get down with it.
I think we at least need to get a start so we can do some homework.
And that's what it is at the start, so, we have captured everything as far as expenses initially for both water, sewer, park and street, city hall and PD. We have not captured all the revenue yet as it applies to water and sewer. Two parts being, water and sewer has always been one budget in the past. This year, we are splitting it out to be two individual standalone P&Ls. They will, the items will be able to separate income and expenses so that they can self-sustain themselves along. In the past few years, the water plant's pretty much carried the sewer plant to work. Moving out of that. So, if we start with, City Hall, in the highlighted area on the front page, one major change, it should have been changed last year, but was not, was franchise fee of right of way. That was captured this year in City Hall. It should have been captured in Parks and Streets. That's what the $100,000 for streets was in there for, was being paid for by, franchise fee. For big paid.
City Hall is, City Hall is the
Oh, it's the big one. Okay.
I didn't print these in color, so you don't see the,
So go down. Yeah, go down to the apps and it's franchise fee, right?
Okay, mine's in color. I'm sorry. The franchise fee and right of ways is, however many lines down, and just below the ad valorem. That is something that it's not in the new budget, the new budget, proposed budget, that will not be in there, that's being moved to Parks and Streets, as it should have been done last year to fully fund Parks and Streets. You will see just above that is our city sales tax and our ad valorem tax income, $625,000 to date. Actually, $685,000 to date. $600,000 is in the budget. I'll put the budget in there for next year at $625,000. We're going to clear $725,000 projected in sales tax this year, which is considerable over last year. But I'm not going to use all that as a budget forecast for income. I think we'll be fine with budgeting $625,000. That valorem tax as well will actually go up a little bit, where our income has not quite been fully applied, but we're $16,000 off the budgeted. And we still have at least 2 checks to collect on the remaining taxes. So we'll stick about the same number, a little less. And you go down, you look at item by item, and I failed to explain this to you. Sorry. Starting on the first sheet, City Hall's the first column. All these other pieces, City Council, Code, Municipal Court, Community Aid, and COVID-19, all roll up and to make this City Hall budget. So your primary column is City Hall. All the other columns are individual P&Ls. They roll up under City Hall.
Okay, your ad valorem tax other to
You talking about the budget number?
budget number.
That was last year's
That's
budget
last year,
number?
because you don't have any certification for this year.
No, not yet. And I did not put that 266 in there. It should have been broken out as it currently is. And interest and so on. So it was put in there 266,000. That was the number that was budgeted, and we're at 250,000 as of August 19th, August 17th. This is, we will exceed, we'll end up bringing in a little more than $266,000.
Probably that.
Yes,
That's going back.
yes.
And this is for the 2021 period.
20,
Yeah.
20, yeah,
23, 21, yeah, next fiscal year.
Right?
yes.
Okay.
And hopefully by the next meeting, I get better at it. I've contacted I've had Paula contact the tax office to try to get some projected numbers as to what we're anticipating getting rounding out the year, so we can get all of our taxes.
It probably won't be available, but we're gonna finalize our sales tax for the 27th.
So yeah, they've been pretty good though about giving us a forecast on it, so at least maybe some numbers to have an idea to be able to build a budget off of. At the end of the day, go to page 3, or at the bottom. Can't see this on this. Total expenses for the year would, are currently at 640,000. But projected, I got to work on getting that down, but our net income would still remain at $304,000. So.
Okay.
I'm still working on getting the projected, expenses down. There's a lot of things that got to be addressed in here. One of the things is all of our,
but I'm trying to make a fence and stuff for them. They like me. Like, they're really comfortable.
one of the issues is our, what do you call it, community aid. I'm waiting, Protector of Blanco has initially put in a $35,000 budget request. We normally give them $3,500.
No, keep Blanco beautiful, KBB. Or, yeah, we could protect our Blanco. I thought they were giving us money. Oh, Historical Commission. Yeah.
Historical Commission, Blanco Historical Commission, I'm sorry, that's for a substantial amount of money this year as opposed to. We normally give out about $15,000 a year. They've had to work at a great deal of money, so. But that's spread out across the library and everything else that we got to give. So I'm waiting on the budget requests coming in from them to the real budget request, so we can pick that down and decide, what do we want different parties to do? And one of the things would be asking the question, the Gable side, that wants to be one of their tasks. They're a little bit expensive. They're going to use the money they have to do one this year, but they have issues getting the other 3. And some of the signage and other things that they want to do, that's going to come from our council. I'm not going to make that call on myself.
Didn't we just appoint a new chair?
That did not come from her. That came from
The previous.
So she hasn't been there long enough to work it out. I've talked to her, she's working it out. She doesn't agree with that much request. I mean, they're asking for money to cover postage notes. How are you gonna use $10,000 worth of postage?
Or they're putting signs up on Blanco City property?
No, they've got to get, permission from property owners at the edges of town.
They're quarters, but welcome to Blanco.
Okay. They've got a purple one out on 1622. Smitty's property.
Okay.
He's offered to give them the city limit side.
Well, that was very nice.
The Peterson's side of it, that property sold, and there's a PEC right away that they cannot access where they want to utilize it as a sign floor. So put that on Mark and get that worked out with PEC.
Let's put it on a poll.
We've got the Blanco Historical Preservation, we've got the library, we've got parks, keep them so beautiful. And of course, part of the other would be the checkbook. Those are all dollar amounts I've got to get worked out.
So have they come and requested those again, or are we just assuming off of last year's?
No, I'm not giving money until I know what it's for.
Right, so they are, right, I thought they either came and requested and came and kind of told us what they were gonna.
Next the workshop will be September 1st, but
Okay.
they have to come and tell, and that's the problem is, you can submit it to me and I'll put it on the council agenda for the next workshop, but tell me what it is.
Yeah.
Tell me how you're gonna use it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't wanna give anyone, even the library, which we will, that's my one soft spot, though. Don't wanna have too much information from. But I'm sure they have a written justification for it. We should be able to explain what we need the money for, where it's going for. But somebody's gonna ask me, and I gotta ask.
I want PowerPoint presentations.
It's full.
Yeah.
How much is laptop?
It's not in the budget, man.
No, I mean, anybody that wants money, they have.
Oh.
give me a PowerPoint.
Work for it, huh?
That's what I'm talking.
I don't think there's anything really egregious in the city council right now. We've got to continue working on our revenue and our revenue stream. And I've got to continue to get that finalized. I would encourage everyone to take some time to look at it. And just feel free, I know Councilman Smith feels free to stop by. He's welcome to that.
Another Paul shutter door.
Is that what happened? I was wondering why it was like. Yeah, explain it.
We just say Councilman Smith in the house, and everybody close the doors. I don't have a door, so I can't close the damn door. Get me a door.
We welcome all of y'all.
We are open, and, but council, I'm not just putting the budget here. When it comes to City Hall, we have obligations we gotta do. If there's feedback in the community that we need to consider certain things, please share with me, you know.
Well, I mean, just the one feedback that I think is our pressing issue are the streets. So, you know, I know we have 100,000 budgeted the rest of this year, but I know that is the one complaint I hear all the time is these roads are horrible. So I just make sure.
How about the intersection at the 13th?
And Mesquite, yeah. No, I think.
Everybody's got a favorite, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, actually,
So-
we both our papers today to try to fit in, I believe, in the Streets and Parks budget, we currently still have $100,000 where we agreed to go with the $150,000 project for the remainder of this year. On this budget.
Well, I want to get off subject, but the streets are a big deal. And I meant to send you this video. I got this video of this. It's it's like a Band-Aid for the street. It's this mat. It's an asphalt mat. So you put the coal, you put the coal down. Huh?
The cold patch?
You put coal patch down, and it's like this big sheet, and you tear the plastic back and you roll it out, tamp it down, and it holds that coal patch into place. Have you seen that?
No.
I'll send you that video. I think for a small town like us, it could be a good solution.
I can see Ronnie stuck with that then. Don't get out of the way quick enough.
Yeah, right. Oh,
I thought you were joking.
No, it's a real.
Well, we're gonna look through the budget numbers.
yeah, I'm gonna run through the budget again.
You have there, I'm just gonna address Ronnie, you're welcome to come and talk about your budget. But we have not put in any of the income revenues for that. The water and the sewer, all are on new rates. The commercial and industrial kick in October the 1st. We've got to finish doing the projection of what that actually is. Residential kicks in on December the 1st. So we've got to get those revenue numbers. We could use the same numbers we have now, but they're going to be short for the rest of the year. We want to project this out correctly. And specifically, since we're breaking out, if I gave you last year's projections on sewer and water, sewer would be losing money and water would be sharing. I don't want to do that. Just put it into the right category and show that we can sustain both of them. And then our last one, we got water truck carrier TV as well. So. I understand Chief is a big fan of the water department.
If I can just add, what you'll find on that, on the water budget
in the sewer budget, of course, as Will said, they used to always be together, we're separating those for the liability, they don't pay them, but figured out. Nonetheless, one of the mistakes that we did make last year was not account for the water treatment plants for being online. So in the water numbers that you're seeing now, you're still accounting for the water plants to be online for the entire year, just in case, because we should have last year, and also the purchase of KLA water during the entire time. So again, just real quick in a nutshell, my water budget has to show that the water plant's online all year, or it's online all year. So I've got to cover two different expenses there. And what we end up with is those variable numbers. Either my electricity and my chemical is up, and our chemical water is way down, or vice versa. But you'll see in this year's budget, we do budget for $250,000 of KLA water for our water treatment plant being offline and just purchase water. So right now, the number's higher. Would you say $160,000 higher last year?
Your overall between both combined water and sewer would be an increased expense budget of $166,000, which is really marginal because that's less than what went in the year previous to.
Right. So last year, we did not account for the $250,000 for paying like water at the time, because we were going to pull it out of the water plant project and let that money pay for it. So again, we do have most of or all of the expenses at this point. There's a few little numbers that we can finalize or what, but until we get our incomes completely squared away, then we'll know if our budget is balanced or if it could be, past at that point or what.
Well, and then also his budget's going up because there was certain equipment that was supposed to have been changed in the insurance deal last year, has not been insured for 2 years. So we're getting those numbers put into having all the equipment covered as the way it should be.
Streets and parks, you'll see, if you're there yet, I'm sorry, I don't want to jump ahead. You're summarizing. No, you're good. No, on streets and parks.
Without income, I don't think anybody really cares.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't care what you spend, as long as you're making money.
Exactly. We are exceeding our income budget $700,000 last year in water.
Okay, so we got homework to do on the city hall, and you're gonna go over all of them, Will, or?
I mean, we're lacking income on everyone. We're finalizing the incomes.
Gotcha.
So, but that's what I mean. It's hard to get the bottom line of what is it a balanced budget or what until we have the incomes squared away.
Well, what I want you to do is currently look at the expenses. Look at the expenses. If you have an issue with the expenses currently, I know as a general rule, don't care what you spend unless as long as you can balance it out and make it more than you can spend. And at the end of the day, we will. But if there's any concern about expenses or question about expenses now, and what we need to include into the deal, because that's the next, starting tomorrow, we start working on CIPs. Every revenue stream has to fund the CIP. Whatever that CIP is, we want to make sure if it's meter fees, and we take meter fees and just say meter fees are going to fund this, or if it's water rates, or if it's sewer rates, or if it's cross connection inspections, CSIs, whatever it is, it's got to have a revenue source to feed the CIP. Even if we're only taking 3 cents a day, 3 cents a bill goes to this CIP, that revenue source is going there, the rest of it goes to operations. And then we start looking at the capital expenses. The capital expenses would be lift stations, things like that we're falling way behind in the past 10 years on infrastructure. The reason the water plant's in position is we've done great with what it is, but we didn't invest in upkeep. We just band-aided as much as we could. That's not necessarily a derogatory of the previous regime that kind of had that philosophy that they could always kind of fall under budget if they didn't ever fix it. Well, you only got to last so many years though.
Only so much duct tape until the whole thing.
Yeah.
We're going to use so many asphalt patches until the whole. It's really hard, and we've got to start thinking about that infrastructure. So, I want to get to operating budget. Operating budget does not include a lift station. Operating budget does not include,
The 200,000 that we have to pay for.
does not include, that's a capital expense. That comes from a different place. I don't want to attach it to a guy's budget that
shouldn't have to spend that out of his operating budget. That's not an operating expense, that's a capital expense.
But, you know, if we watch those operating expenses up, I guess this goes without saying. You know, we're all adults here, and if we can find places that we can do things better, cheaper, keep that overhead low, then we'll have more money for those capital expenses.
Absolutely.
That's it.
And we've done a really good job this past year. The thing is always the budget killer. Every year, the budget killer. We have an operating budget. We pass. We got to spend $200,000 from Pollard. Where are we going to get that? No one said we're going to get it. It's sewer. It's a sewer pipeline. Not anything that ever said, well, we're going to take it out of reserve, we're going to take it out of this fund, we're going to take it out of this fund. It's just going to hit his budget, and his budget didn't have that $200,000. And that's not the right way to do it.
Unforeseen expenses. You
And
never
then
know what.
unknown engineering expenses, if someone decides that we've got to have it engineered the same thing 7 times. Legal expenses. I can't think of Brad Joe now, he's not here.
He's not on there.
But all those things that we put budgets in, last year we said we put in, that came in with $300,000 for the TCEQ permit and legal and engineering.
Right.
Then right at the top, cut 200 off of it, make it 100. But we know it's gonna cost 300. We knew going into it's gonna cost 300. Well, let's take 200 off of it.
That was the other side, we were hoping it was gonna drag out another year. So we get all that.
That's why, yeah, there's going to be a policy. Process. I mean, you know, from my standpoint, I'd really like to see us not have a deficit. Right. I mean, I charge you with that goal. And we'll help you figure out how to get it.
We will, and the main thing is getting our new revenue sources estimated for next year based on what we have now, not on what's coming, not on what growth we anticipate, but based on the fact that we increase water rates, sewer rates, trash rates. Trash cannot be a negative anymore. It's got to be a break even. We're not saying we're going to make money on it. We've got to quit giving up $5 per month per customer. And we have. Now we got to factor that into next year and make sure that everything is solved.
But no pizza for you, Mom.
Chief budget, I'll start with, but I'm gonna have him explain a lot of it. We spent quite a bit of time, and he has some really good ideas, and it's important that I'll lay out here that all these budgets will be expanded out to show a 5-year projection of what we perceive the income and the expenses to increase over 5 years, but also in that includes personnel. What are we gonna need? We look at it right now and say, 5 years down the road, we're gonna need 2 more backhoes and 3 more men in public works. Then we need to start figuring that right now. And that's why we're gonna budget this out 5 years. Chief is on the same thought process, and he has a couple of things that he wants to discuss. At least this is where we need direction. Not before what you want to add. It's a overall budget increase, but I can say over what we've done in the past years, it needs to be a budget increase. And
You mean we're not defunding the police by?
not yet. I'm glad you want to make this. Both in equipment and cars, we've had some extra money in the budget for PD this year that we were able to get a head start on some of the things that for compliance that need to be done. I added in, which when you weren't there, I got to add it in there. I added in the $30,000 budget for the new security fence and gates. We forgot to discuss it. We will. I know we can be cheaper than that, but right now for budget reasons, I'm putting it in a little bit higher because there's a few unknowns that I don't know about yet. But I think we are actually already cut down a little bit by letting our neighbor clear our brush pile, so let it up to the lot. We could have given them free dump.
Right, yeah.
We can't get them to pay for half the fence. Maybe.
I haven't finished.
Oh, okay.
We're working. Keith, you go ahead and jump in where you want to on your budget. I won't put words in your mouth.
Good evening. Like Will said, we're trying to project out, so build a model now and we can grow to. So one thing I looked at was the salaries for the officers, and there was, total compression. 10-year officer and an officer we would hire tomorrow are making the same amount of money. So I put a set plan in place, put people where they needed to be, and to offset that, my proposal is on the vacancies we have to actually reduce the starting salary a little bit, so that'll eat some of the other costs. So I think that'll take care of some of that compression that we have within the department, and then it'll show that there's room for the officers to grow into. And it's neat.
So right now on vacancies, you have one vacancy or?
So we have one vacancy and we have a part-time position that we talked about. I'd like to convert that to a full-time position. And so that will double up our coverage on nights, so we have double coverage. So we're not leaving one officer out here alone. When I got here, I had 2 officers on baby leave, so we were scrambling to get guys. We couldn't cover nights. So we're trying to prevent that in the future. But I think with that staffing model, with just by converting that one part-time to a full-time position, I think we're good for a considerable amount of time. Unless there's a bunch of growth in the city that happens that we don't see coming.
Can I just ask, I don't even know how many officers we have on the force.
So we have a total of, we're authorized 10 paid, one of those right now is part-time.
Okay.
And one of those is a school resource officer. So most of that salary, I think 10 months of that salary is passed through to the school district. About 9 months is passed through the school district.
It's in our budget, but it's a pass-through, so we show it as being paid and then being refunded, but it still counts in our budget.
Right.
So we see that revenue. The other thing I looked at was our vehicles, the age of the vehicles, trying to forecast out that 5-year model on keeping that fleet in good position. So, proposed to put vehicles on basically a 3-year rotation. So we would purchase a vehicle, keep that vehicle for 3 years, and then we would sell it. At the 3-year mark, I'm forecasting numbers because they're not really good data from the past. But if we average about 30,000 miles a year per vehicle, that'll keep that vehicle under 100,000 miles, which is where once you get over 100, the maintenance cost and the resale value just plummets.
Right.
So I want to put the vehicles on a 3-year cycle, but the equipment on a 6-year cycle, because the equipment will last longer than the vehicle. So we outfit a new vehicle, at the end of 3 years, we sell the vehicle, we pull the equipment from that vehicle and put it in a new vehicle. And that way we're doubling the lifespan of the equipment, but we're limiting the life cycle of the vehicle. Because the other thing that the police department understands is that if the odometer says 30,000 miles, you're really about 50,000 miles because they're always idle. So when they're on the side of the road, so you have all that wear and tear on everything except for your brakes, your tires, and those things.
We're not talking about leases.
Sorry?
We're not talking about leases.
Yeah, so you'll see in here, I have a lease line because we're already in a lease, and then a separate purchase line. And the amount I put in there, I've gone out for bids, I've got some of them back, so, kind of estimating where they'll be. I think they'll actually come in a little bit lower than what I have here, but by the time I got this done, I'd only received one of the bids back. So we're looking at different makes of vehicle, we're looking at Fords, Chevys, and Dodges, just seeing what we can get the best deal on, and then what the long-term resale value is, and then where we can get our best mileage and maintenance costs. So we're gonna factor all that into that.
So are you looking at SUVs or cars or
SUVs.
SUVs? Okay.
Right now,
That's standard. I mean,
all the police manufacturers are pushing cars out, Chargers and other things. They just don't have room for the equipment that we carry. It was a sad day when they stopped making Crown Vics, so that's the last good police car.
And there is a plan to kind of cover some of that cross initiative by selling.
Right, and I was gonna mention, we forgot to put that in here, I have a revenue line for sale of assets. So, and I can give you all a copy of that too. So I have that 5-year plan, and it'll show year by year what vehicles will sell and what vehicles will purchase going out, starting this year and an additional 5 years to show. So based on the vehicles we have now, my recommendation is that we sell 3 vehicles in October and replace them with 2. So the sale of those 3 vehicles will help offset the new vehicles.
How many vehicles do we need?
I think what I've proposed in here is that we maintain a fleet of 8, which I think is the right amount. The school resource officer, sergeant, myself, investigations, and 2 per day and 2 per night.
So I guess we have it on a ladder and we would do 3 a year.
No, so we would do 2 a year because the age of the current fleet, the way, I can let you look at this up now. I'm sorry to make copies of it.
Which one you looking for, man?
The vehicle replacement.
Go ahead, make copies for you.
Yeah, it'd be helpful. You put my glasses on, I'll be all the wrong thing.
I mean, we do 2 a year and we've got, we're gonna keep the vehicle 3 years and that would only cover 6 vehicles.
Because we can ease them in. So what we'll do is, so you'll see once. So the plan is that we have 1 vehicle right now that we're trying to seize. So initially we'll keep that vehicle, we'll use that for the school resource officers, convert that into school resource officer vehicle. The vehicles that we currently have online, we have 3 2018s. So the intent is to sell two of the 3 18s. One of them has about 60,000 miles on it. I would take that as my vehicle because I put less miles on it, and I'm not as worried about being involved in the pursuit. I want to keep the new vehicles and the patrol guys because that's where our liability comes into. So we can extend the life of some of the vehicles as they come off of patrol. We can rotate those back to investigations and myself for an additional year. And that's how we line up with that rotation. And then Will and I have talked, and then if there's a need, within the city, instead of selling it, we have to look and see what we're getting on resale. But we could possibly repurpose those vehicles. If City Hall needs an admin vehicle, or 90,000 miles on a police car that might get in a pursuit is different than 90,000 miles on a code enforcement officer who's going to just, travel around to different residences in the city. I think we can extend the life of some of these a little bit longer by putting them on this.
Do we have a canine unit?
We do. One of the vehicles is marked as a canine, and that will go into that. So that's listed on that rotation as well.
I've got another question.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, and I'm looking over our costs today and our proposed budget and for this year, and I'm looking at the new budget, I'm looking at your insurance costs. I know we're gonna have additional salaries and our costs and insurance, but it's from last year's budget to this year's budget, it's a 45% increase.
So what we did is because there's unknowns, we budgeted at the highest amount. Because if an officer gets married tomorrow, and they want to include their family, that wasn't budgeted. We fill these 2 vacancies with officers who have family. So we budgeted at the higher end, hoping to not have to spend it. But like you were talking about earlier, where does that money come from if it's not budgeted? So some of that money, we hope not to spend. I don't think everybody's going to get married, but.
Well, perfect example is most of the officers, like yourself, has wife and kids, and they're not covering his insurance because they're on his wife's insurance. But if she lost her job, they would have to be added to his insurance at an hour cost. But the other part of that is last year's payroll was not in there correct at all. So I would say probably, well, it looks like a 45% increase is probably a 20% increase from last year and a 25% increase overall. But it's worst case scenario numbers. We're trying to make sure that we get all the right stuff in there for worst case scenario going forward.
So I guess just going down to these budgets.
And I will add as well, as I said, on some of the equipment from Petro Parks and Public Works was not in this insurance plan. Some of the police vehicles are not in the insurance plan. So some of the vehicles that were in the insurance plan, we haven't had for 4 years.
Yeah, okay.
Some of that stuff. Some of that stuff has changed, and we also increased a lot of the building insurance values. The covered parking at the police deal was only insured for $22,000 or $2,200. The cost for replacement is much more than that.
Well, you and I had visited over, on the insurance, and it appeared we were underinsured on multiple lines.
Everything, yes.
That's what I've been for the golf cart.
Yeah.
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 This kind of, when I left Fair Oaks, I think we had over 700 golf carts.
They're great for pursuit. Well, when we passed the ordinance, what was that, 4 or 5 years ago, that we allowed golf carts, but it never seemed to
It was,
take off here. You see people driving over the Polaris and the mules or,
No, they have to go within their city streets though, they don't.
right, you can't cross.
And that's a separate ordinance if you want to pass that on the.
We have, we have.
Separate on golf carts.
well, no, we don't have one for mules and all that. It's only golf carts that,
It's separate.
Yes.
You can authorize the charge of permits if you want them on the street. You just have to look at how many smaller vehicles we have interacting with.
With Kinder Morgan trucks.
yeah.
Oh, we had an issue that was talked about 2 years ago for the Lavender Fest. There was a little bit of a conflict with allowing the mules because they wanted to use Chatham Street, Muncie Street, which is textile road.
Right.
And there was some conflict in how we could do that. We'll address that later.
So when you'll see some of these zeroed out, I combined some of the line items. Things like sexual assault kits, drug kits, I rolled all that into just under identification instead of breaking it out separately. Subscriptions, some of the stuff I wasn't sure where it had been budgeted, so we do things online, leads online, we can help look for stolen items. It's a program online. T-Sleds is what we use to track all the officers' training. So those are annual subscription fees to use those sources. The $50,000, that's to outfit the vehicles. All the equipment goes in, but again, that equipment we hope to get 6 years out of instead of converting the vehicle. So once we get the vehicles where they need to be, that'll kind of be an every year thing. Also, under safety, increased that a little bit for body armor. Body armor has a life of 5 years, and we've replaced that. We are going to apply for a Department of Justice grant that will quickly change for half of that, but we have to get the grants. So those grants are normally pretty easy, but I won't do the budget on the high side.
Not to get off topic too much. Mason Lodge, love Tom. And we bought some body armor a few years back, so don't forget about approaching Mason Lodge for a donation. Just FYI. We do that.
The big difference there is the purchase of the vehicles and the outfitting of the vehicles instead of a lease. And then the step plan for the officers, that came out pretty even this year, just getting that in place because although we had compression in the salaries, we had a lot of compression in the officers' tenure, so it wasn't very widespread. We're only up to, I think, from step 1 to step 3 is all we're doing right now with the officers that are here with the tenure, and then broke the sergeants out, put them, or the sergeant on a separate step plan. Instead of giving that little stipend, or he's getting the same amount as the officers, just to give that little stipend. So the sergeants are actually, will be on a separate step plan. So they can grow over time.
Physical verification and so on.
So is that in effect now, or is that waiting
That's in the proposed budget.
in the proposed budget? So
I haven't done anything with salaries right now. Everyone's already working here. The only thing we talked about is making that part-time, full-time, and then depending on how that happens, with
You know, that may not happen until October, just based on the selection process.
And over the, just two major increases in the budget, vehicles and salaries. And in that salary plan, creating a step plan will actually be lower salaries in coming years as you add.
Newer police, yeah.
Instead of everybody coming in at the same number, staying there, I know it may be easier to budget that way, but that's not the right way. You get those certifications and so on to be able to progress.
And it's really not that hard to budget with the step plan, because you can forecast that out. You know, officers stay, we know what steps they're gonna be at, if they leave, don't save their money because we're just.
Starting back at the budget.
Yeah.
Right.
I think those are the changes. If you have any questions, I can go ahead and answer.
I don't at this time, but I'll probably do a lot more homework.
Yeah, and I have, if anybody has questions on supporting company and how I came up with the numbers, I have the quotes and, you know, my math and how I got to where I got. Sure that.
Okay.
Before you speak, I wanted to let you know, I sit on the front porch in the morning and have coffee, and since you've taken over, I've seen patrols come by my house on a regular basis. And I want you to know I appreciate that. Just the fact that I see you drive by, or somebody drive by, is a good thing. And I want you to know that I appreciate that.
I appreciate that.
I wasn't seeing that as much before.
And hopefully they'll be more visible because we're putting, some colored reflective striping on the vehicles, so that you'll see them when they come by.
Awesome.
Somebody's got to keep an eye on you.
More reason than just being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Probably won't get attention.
Haven't been able to throw eggs at you.
Actually, I will say last
Wants to
night,
let me down in my flip flops in my shorts with my coffee in the morning, you know.
last
We're
night
welcome
we
to try.
had a lost dog in the neighborhood. And, it was kind of high alert over Pittsburgh. Everybody was out looking for Sunny Girl. And I saw this vehicle down on Trainer coming toward me with really bright lights, and it kind of turned into Pamela's property there on Trainer, you know. Looked, and then when he came around the corner, it was an officer, looking for Sunny Girl.
Well, that's what he said. He was really good, but that's your house.
Yeah, we're watching you, yeah. We're keeping an eye.
For the roads.
But, yeah, it's got a real shift too, and, community engagement.
I'm gonna try, and the officers are, I think they're embracing it. We're gonna try to do one of those things where, we're gonna try and increase the home watch program, the people in the town, we have it, but it's going out advertised, so we're gonna try to push that and just try to be out visible in the community.
I really like the visibility. The new beach colors are really nice. With the, Caesar car that they're gonna put the SR, we're talking about putting the SRO in. It's gonna get a little bit different, more school-related police colorings, but have some school colors with it. And I think, you know, those kind of things, the visibility in the community is a big deal, but the positive interaction with the community is a big deal. Chief is brought in here, that I just can't be more appreciative of.
So did y'all find Sunny Girl or whatever, what was her name?
I'm sorry.
Did y'all find the dog?
They did find the dog.
Okay.
The dog came home. They're exploring apparently.
Did you have it, Mr. Smith, waiting for a ransom? Waiting for.
We are meeting again Monday, next Tuesday.
The first.
The first, so we, I told you, every Tuesday.
From now till Christmas,
Yeah.
unless something else comes up with contracts or anything like that, that we have to.
We have a lot to do between now and then.
Deadline tomorrow, Wednesday.
Or what's on the, or what's on the agenda? Friday at noon.
3 o'clock. Let's try not to put anything on
Yeah, no, I think the next time we need to just,
Yeah.
So we're
It's not a regular meeting after
5:30, September 2nd. is
that.
budget.
September the first,
What's that?
Tuesday the first,
This is
Tuesday.
Tuesday the first.
Tuesday first,
2020.
Tuesday the first at 5:30.
Oh, I can't, okay, well, I must have put it on. Tuesday at 5:30.
You know, if there's community aid that want to request funds, could they do that? If I was working on the council meeting.
No, like the,
The 8th will be our
Yeah, the eighth will be a regular meeting.
Not, say, if somebody did show up, they could.
And then the 22nd, again, we have to approve the tax rate and the budget.
Say, I'm ready.
I have to post everything on the paper
So our
by
homework,
the 8th.
our homework basically is to look at this, see if we have any questions, and the next workshop is basically gonna be,
You got questions.
right.
I want you to question the expense. We're still building all the revenue, so the revenue will be built by next Tuesday to be able to show.
If you get it to us in advance.
You know, a lot of maybe. I mean,
I really want
to.
By advance,
I really
we
want-
like an hour before we start.
Yeah. Like, you gotta do something.
I agree with you 100%. It should have been, but you know,
What do you about Saturday evening?
I'll get you something.
Well, you've got to do something, so that's, okay. It helps us to be, I know it's hard on you guys, you know.
It's not so much hard to do the budget, it's that, the rest of the stuff never stops.
Yeah.
Being pulled out to development sites for hour-long conversations about what we can do, or what we think we might do. We've had.
Tell them you're tied up till the 23rd.
Sorry?
Tell them you're tied up till the 23rd.
Yeah, I know. And part of it was, is I forgot that I had to take my kid to college on Friday. And when I said I was gonna take her, I said, well, you know, Lori's out too, she's in training. I said, well, I'll be back by 2 o'clock. I'll come in till 9 o'clock, 9:30, and I'll be back by 2 o'clock. Well, I got back at 5:30. I still did work. I still came in, but it's like, that was just the whole day was shot for doing numbers after.
Just wiping the tears, here doing all that, it's hard to,
That was right, that all because of my water.
yeah,
I was blended from the damage you did to it.
yeah. All right,
We need to make a motion to.
To adjourn.
to adjourn, okay. So do we have a motion to adjourn this budget workshop? Mr.
Who did it?
Mr. Lewis and then Mr. Smith seconded it. All in favor, say aye. 8:31. Yeah, it could have been more painful, but I think, yeah, if they had a longer day, so next one will be just budget, so we can spend the 3 or 4 hours. Yeah, okay, I have to do that.
Let's get a ballpark. But I really, we really got to put the whole. I'll give a call and see when you think let's go with your get the. There you go. Hang on, I forgot to tell you, you like to see the budget in the title only. Once we get everything done, all those little line items are over in the title only. So that all this expanded 10-page stuff, I blew the other one up so you could actually read it, will actually shrink up to.
On Monday, I'm gonna do the rest of my, I like, you know, that.
Yeah. You don't care what makes up the insurance title, right? No, it's insurance.
And I guess it'll make us be, we go over the balance sheet.
The balance sheet, yes, yeah. That I can get out to you earlier. That's the.
I've already got it.
You go right there. You get one.
Hold on, I think we got it.
Oh, he just got a box.
Do it.
You're not good. Not good. Not good. Exactly. That's better.
It's not like I created those numbers.
Those numbers were good.
Yeah. We're gonna figure out when to do the audit. I want to know before we get to the
All
audit.
right, we'll check.
I want all the different hospitals, sit there with the verdict, and I guess they want all the paperwork, we got the front and back.
Oh, yeah, I emailed Charles, and he's usually really good.
That's not water, you don't have to water.